Season 3 of The Pass is here. I know it's long overdue. We have a new intro. We still got the same content. Well, actually, it's a little bit of new content because there's new things going on in 2019. So buckle up. We got a lot of things to talk about on The Pass. Episode 229 of The Pass is here. What is going on, y'all? The show's BT. Have yet another episode lined up. A lot to talk about. Not gonna really waste your time with all the intro fluff and bluff, but we'll just go ahead and get into it. So the Super Bowl teams have been selected based on their matchups. We're gonna kind of dive into each conference, or rather division, AFC then NFC or NFC then AFC matchup, and kind of talk about the woes and the oh-nos that happen involving the Super Bowl. So first thing, as I mentioned, Rams played against the Saints. And the game was kind of starting off in the Rams' favor, and they basically had a strong lead or a strong push early on. However, as the match continued, it looked as though, I guess you can say it without saying it, that New Orleans was trying to make it a game. And they did make it a game. It was an even rougher situation because there was a big call that was missed during the matchup between the Rams and the Saints. There was a hit on one of the defenders. He was defenseless, literally. On one of the wide receivers for New Orleans. He was a defenseless player. He didn't even have the ball, and one of the Rams players hit him, and it caused enough of an impact where he wasn't able to really make a play towards the ball, and the refs were oblivious to the call. They didn't call it. They realized that it was a blown call, which in football is very achievable but tough to acknowledge that, hey, we messed up, especially in the circumstance or in the situation. And in this one is no exception. The reason why was because if you look at the play, there were enough camera angles to kind of know, look, this should be called. The tough part of it is it wasn't a play that was challengeable either. So you had that factor to kind of fight against as well. And anytime you have those type of situations occur, it just always turns into like a snowball effect, and that was basically what happened. It's ironic because if you look at it, a couple of years ago, the Rams were 4-12. They went 24-8 since the new head coach has been running the team, Sean McVay, and he's basically came in with just a winning mentality. Last season, the LA Rams played pretty good football, but this year, obviously, they played good enough to win the Super Bowl. They kind of go over a couple of highlights during the game, and they brought up the obvious that the NFL has an officiating problem. 3 plays after Ted Ginn's big grab on third down, Breeze threw down the sidelines for Tommy Lee Lewis, who was promptly blown up by Nickel Robey-Coleman before the ball got there. And they just wanted to kind of overstate how obvious it was, especially with the play itself. What made it tough to process was the fact that the defender who hit Lewis wasn't even facing the ball. He kind of had a target of just hitting the wide receiver. And so when he hit him, it was, you can't say it was like a malicious play, but in the same token, it was a play that should have been seen as a pass interference. And that could have made a much different impact on the game. There was talk, or there was concern of whether or not the commissioner, Roger Goodell, would intervene. From what we can see and from what's kind of obvious, it looks like he's kind of playing hands off, which is going to bite him in the end. I personally believe, only because the NFL has been getting this black eye about officiating for years. And we saw it. There's no other point or other time of really witnessing this until we really looked at what we've had to see with officiating throughout the season. A lot of players have been just blatantly caught out there with certain hits and certain plays, and this one obviously was no exception. So will the NFL get it right or ever make an effort of getting it right? I honestly don't know. And I say that I say those words in that magnitude only because if I feel as though the league is trying to do the right thing with officiating games, but what makes it a battle and what makes it such a challenging process is they're not really willing to call it for what it is. And that is where it becomes like this very undaunting experience as a fan. If you go back to a couple, like early on in the season, there was a hit by I can't think of his name offhand with the Packers where he hit the quarterback, and the ref looked at him and threw the flag just as nonchalant about it. And it shouldn't have even really been a call to begin with, but it is what it is. So we have that game, and then you turn to the Patriots and the Chiefs. And I mentioned this in my previous show that the only way that the Chiefs would be able to beat the Patriots is they had to play a perfect game. They played a near perfect game, and I've said this on show, so I want to go ahead and clear the air. Mahomes is not a rookie. This is actually his second year. Last year, he was kind of, as they call it in football, he was kind of on clipboard duty for Alex Smith, who obviously, as we all know, went to the Redskins, and that turned out being one of the weirdest but unexpectable trades, or not trades, but free agent pickups in the NFL, because no one really kind of saw that coming. But I think it was kind of it was a snowball effect based on, if you look at Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota, things of that sort. So we fast forward to this matchup, which also went to and before I continue, the Rams did beat New Orleans, and they beat them in overtime on a field goal. You factor in then the Patriots and the Chiefs, and I'm going to talk about this from a different angle, only because it was brought up, and I think you have to know and understand that it's jacked up to look at it this way, but it's all in the interpretation. The perception or the idea is that the NFL, and this statement doesn't go without being said because it's always brought up every year or every time certain teams are in the playoffs or have gone to the Super Bowl, that the NFL is rigged. And there was an emphasis of there being sports entertainment. And I want to shed light on this in my own way. It is sports entertainment. And that you're incited to that opinion. But in theory and in reality, the teams still have to go out there and play. If entertainment is that the Browns go 0-16 or 2-14 every year, that's not the entertainment that fans genuinely want. And people who really watch football or understand the basis of football get that's not what a fan wants. Especially even with certain teams like the Raiders, they're diehard teams that, media or no media, it shouldn't be placing the expectation that we want to see this team lose, or we want to see this team win, or whatever the case may be. And this is no exception to that. The Brady Mahomes matchup was one to remember. It did go back and forth at one point. Tom Brady was able to help the Patriots drive and get the game forced into overtime. And mainly how it works is, you have an opportunity to score. If you score on your touchdown, if you score a touchdown during your possession, the other team has a chance to score. And they have to score a touch. They have to match whatever you did. In this case, the Chiefs weren't successful, and the Patriots were successful in their drive. They were able to score on their drive, and that was what ended that matchup. It just was. It was a good matchup. I mean, I'll be fair in saying it because I really didn't have a chance to because I was at work. So I didn't really get to watch the matchups, but I did get highlights and really watch the insight of those two games. But I mean, we're here. It's close to what a lot of people predicted. A lot of people kind of saw the Patriots going to the Super Bowl. And the Saints were kind of the favorite from the beginning of the season because they were looked at as a good team on paper, even before the whole Dez Bryant idea came to light. So, I mean, they just didn't have the best run at the end, which it happens. But overall, we're now in the place where we have the Rams going against the Patriots. It's not the most exciting Super Bowl, but I feel like, as with sports, they're going to make the best of it, and you have to, because the Rams are kind of looked at as the underdog in this match, which is very interesting for them, even with playing against the Patriots. So, right this second, I would honestly pick the Rams for this matchup. And I think what's tough about it, because a lot of people don't want to really bring this up, but it needs to be said. The Rams are in a great position because no one really has them on radar to really do anything through like challenging to football. And when I say challenging, I'm looking at it from the perspective of they're not a strong favorite to win this matchup, but that doesn't mean that they can't beat that they don't have the ability to beat the Patriots. The Patriots are a good team. It would be tough to not acknowledge this or present it because it's just how football is. But a lot of people have the speculation or theory that this could possibly be Tom Brady's last year. So let's get him a championship, cement his legacy in football, all of that type jazz. So that conversation has come up, which no one should be surprised by. But if you are, hey, to each his own. And that's just kind of the way that's all being presented in its entirety. That's kind of the football world right now, as many people are already aware of. You're in a standstill with college football because a lot of kids are looking at declaring for the draft. So there's not much going on in college. As they say, no news is good news. And that's just kind of what it is. So we'll be, leaving college football in its back steps. Switching over to the round ball known as basketball. As a Houston fan, I saw this coming. And before I forget, because I don't have it listed, they were able to list the actual starters for the NBA All-Star game. Let me see if I can get those real quick, because there were quite a few. Let me see. Because that story definitely was the big announcement. Let's see. All right. So we have our captains and we have our team or our players who are B starters. LeBron will be the starters for his team. Will be not the starters. He'll be the captain for his team, and Giannis Antetokounmpo will be the captain for his team. The five The 4 players joining these individuals for the West, there was Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Paul George, James Harden. Personally, I have no problems with this list. And it's only because if you really look at it, Paul George has had a great year. You can say whatever you want, have any feelings or qualms towards it, but Paul George has been playing out of his mind this year. He's and I say let me backtrack. I say playing out of his mind, but he's been playing in his role to fit with OKC, especially when it's looked at as Russell Westbrook is the guy or the man in OKC. With everything going the way it did, as far as Carmelo not working out, which I'm going to get into that in a moment, and other things, this just kind of went. I mean, it's been his year. And James Harden, what more is there to say? A lot of people were shocked that he wasn't chosen as a captain, but it's also not the worst idea because he actually is a starter. Because I remember it was a meme that went around and said he was a starter, but he wasn't selected as a captain, but he's averaged so many points per game in a span of games. I think it's like 21 games. Right now he's still on an active 30-point streak or 30-plus point streak. And he played against, or the Rockets played against the Knicks in the Garden, and he scored 61, I believe 61 or 62. It was 61. And that feat hadn't been reached in quite some time. The last person that kind of had numbers up in that range was Carmelo. So props to him for being a starter. And as we know, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant was a given. The East is where it gets kind of fun because you got to look at location. Kemba Walker was chosen as a starter. And this is actually his first starting nod for the All-Star game, which is understandable because the game is in Charlotte, so no surprise there. Kemba Walker. You also have Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, and Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid's been playing really good basketball, with no exception. Kyrie, what isn't there to say is kind of if you look at the Eastern Conference, and I've talked about this on the show before, the Eastern Conference is wide open. The only player that is tough to not see starting would be Victor Oladipo. I'll go ahead and share this story now. He did suffer a very gruesome injury. He is out for the remainder of the season. I think they mentioned he broke his fib. I might be wrong, but I want to make sure I give you the correct info because I'm not here to give fake in news. But he actually says he ruptured his quadriceps tendon. And it's the factor of looking at how the team will look or how the change is going to come with him being out of the rotation or out of the lineup. So those are your starters. They're going to do the draft on, let's see. Well, before they do the draft, they're going to have the reserves, which are 7 players from the East and the West, which are going to be selected by the coaches. That'll be done on January the 31st, which is next Thursday. And you have, after that, they're going to do the actual draft itself, which the draft is, they're actually going to show that on TV, on TNT. It's going to be that following. So this past Thursday was the Eastern lineups were unveiled. Next week, Eastern and Western starters were unveiled. Next week is going to be the East and West reserves. The following week on the 7th is when we will have the actual draft between both teams or between both team captains for the NBA All-Star game. So that's our lineups. Those are our teams. And I will say without a shadow of a doubt that the picks are spot on for each conference. So props to them for getting that all squared away. So we have those stories. This story kind of lingered for a couple of months because it's been a rocky road for Houston with Carmelo. Carmelo didn't fit Houston. Houston didn't fit Carmelo, however you want to put it. And it ended up getting exposed thanks to what was seen as far as him being on the roster. So if you look at it, Carmelo came in, or when Carmelo was looking at teams, he wanted to start. But he also wanted to kind of have his own call of where to be. So the option when he was at OKC was he would be picked up by Atlanta, which happened. Atlanta picked him up, and then out of nowhere, they bought out his contract. So Atlanta bought out his contract, made him a free agent. Houston jumped on board. Houston went ahead and got him. He wanted to go to Houston to start. Him and D'Antoni weren't really the best of buddies or pals in New York. So having this come up in Houston, it was kind of almost seen or observed as deja vu. It happened. Go through the season. Carmelo didn't really start many games. He didn't play many games. He wasn't getting many minutes. It eventually turned into Houston was no longer going to be playing Carmelo. It didn't mean he was no longer on the team. He just was not being played. So it was a matter of finding a place for him to call home in that time period. And let me backtrack. Carmelo played 10 games with Houston. But he was traded to the Chicago Bulls for John Diebler and cash considerations. Oh, I'm sorry. The Bulls acquired the rights to John Diebler and cash considerations in exchange for the trade for the rights to Tadija Dragicevic. And it's been made evident also that Carmelo will not be played with, he's not going to play with Chicago. So in 2 years, well, not even 2 years, but in 1 year of basketball, he technically played for 4 teams. He played for Oklahoma City. He played for Atlanta for a couple of days, but he never suited up, obviously. He played for Houston, where he actually played. He played for Chicago, where he's being released. And now it's a matter of where is he going next. Sources early on are saying LA. The talk has come up about Dallas because Dallas is having its battles with Dennis Smith Jr., but it was confirmed that he's actually going to be playing. I don't know where Carmelo's going to end up. It wouldn't be a bad idea for him to go to LA. The factor is, if he goes to LA, will he start? Because the idea and the analogy of getting Carmelo and LeBron on the same team has been talked about multiple times. If it were to happen, it could be a good mix, but you're getting, and it's bad to say it this way, but it's the truth, you're getting a declining Carmelo. That's your only caveat and or battle with this transaction or this trade. So Houston no longer has him. Chicago no longer has him. But how he gets waived or where he gets sent to is going to factor in to the next steps of this potential deal. Jumping in a calm way over to college sports, UConn is in a very tight position. And I didn't think of the extent of this because when I thought of UConn, I thought of UConn and their women's basketball team, which has been winning and has had a winning formula for quite some time. But there's a possibility that there could be some sports being cut from UConn based on there being a $40 million budget gap. Athletic director David Benedict, who spoke before Saturday's men's college basketball game against Tulane, said there remains a strong belief that UConn has become a nationally renowned university in part because of its sports success. But he said the athletic division must examine how it is structured. He says UConn will look at all opportunities to increase revenue and cut expenses before considering cutting a sport. There's a lot of athletic departments over the past few years that have had to do that. It's probably one of the most difficult things you can do as an athletic director and an athletic department. We're going to look at all opportunities and try to deal with this prior to that, but sometimes there's inevitability. In an NCAA financial statement released Thursday, UConn reported that total generated revenue from sports last year totaled $40.4 million, while expenses came to $80.9 million. Football lost $8.7 million, men's basketball $5 million, and women's basketball, a perennial power, had expenses that outpaced revenues by more than $3 million. And I'm looking at it because from a fan's perspective, we don't think about this. There's a lot of money that goes behind the scenes for a lot of these teams, such as getting uniforms, traveling, if they have to feed the players, like all of those things come into play with the financing, with the financial breakdown, or they call it the bottom line. And it's even rougher because you would look at UConn's women's team and you're thinking, well, they've been winning, so that should be bringing in something. But what's coming with those wins outside of the championship, the acknowledgement of saying, hey, we were champion. And they go into a little bit more information about that as well with the team. This is a huge blow to UConn because if they lose, they're trying to find a way to work around making the money work, but it's intense, man. It is very, very, very intense that it's getting to this point now. So if the programs are cut, that's definitely going to be a story we could possibly be talking about in the future. But that's where we are as of now with those stories of those circumstances. We're going to go ahead and get into stuff. I don't have this article shared, and I'm not going to give a massive amount of attention to it, but I'm going to talk about it because it needs to be shared. Only because anyone that knows me knows I have a tendency to be pretty transparent with my show, but also not go too far off the handle with what I feel or how I feel. Because I was initially not going to talk about this, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it to attention because it needs to be addressed. A few weeks ago, there was a documentary that came on TV for R. Kelly. Have I personally watched the documentary? No, I have not. Am I going to talk about the documentary? Obviously, because I haven't watched it, I'm not going to talk about it. But I'm going to go ahead and clear the air on a couple of things outside of that. Because as I'm learning and as I've shared with others, you personally are a brand. Even if you don't have a business, you are personally your own accountability or your own factor of being responsible to do what's right. All of that being said, as many of you recall, I believe it was episode 227. We were at MagFest and I did a podcast with some friends and we all had a, full roundtable off the chain discussion. You definitely may want to check that show out if you have not already. But before we did that show, a couple of days before, we had all, we're in our room, we're all coming together and we're having a musical session talking about top 10 artists of R&B. Everyone went into the list. We all started talking. Names were coming in. Names were being removed. The discussion got pretty cool and comfortable. we made our list, and one of the names that was on the list obviously was R. Kelly. Now I'm going to say this on my show, and I'm going to share this to dead this story once and for all. As a music snob and as a music fan, I do not condone what he has done or could possibly be continuing to do. I don't know his life to that extent because it's not my life. I don't think it was... I would have never thought that doing something as simple as making a top 10 list would generate the traction that it did with an individual who I've personally known for a couple of years. And by going the way it did, it was a public post that I presented that caused this person to get very offended. And I had to kind of take the high road, but also personally take the low road in getting them to understand that it was wrong to address that the way it was addressed. I'm not here to apologize for the list being created. I'm here to clear who I am as a person. And I don't want this to take up too much time because there are other topics that I genuinely want to talk about, but I wanted to get this out of the way because I did have someone state, are you going to talk about the documentary, or how do you feel about it? I can't talk about what I didn't watch, and I don't plan on watching it. The reason I'm not watching it, or I don't have any intentions of watching it, is one, I'm not going to profit him. I'm not going to give him credit for what has happened, especially in the sense that the media has done that enough. And even with me talking about this now, is too much. He's a sick, nasty individual. And if anyone who knows me on a personal level feels in any way, shape, or form that I support that, then you don't know me very well. The comment won't be removed from my page. The conversation regarding the comment has been addressed privately. And I've made changes to my approach with that person since then. The transparent part with me now, because of that happening, it has forced me to be more direct in dialect with people. Meaning, if there's something that needs to be communicated and or spoken about, we're going to talk about it. Not, let's go to social media and publicly vent and deal with everything in the open when you can actually communicate with this person. Because in most instances, you have a way of being able to reach or contact said individual. It's how you go about doing it that can make or break things. And sometimes we forget that. So I just wanted to share that and state that. I know that was probably like a roundabout way of putting it, but the top 10 list that was made that included him was solely on the basis of music. And to add to that, bringing personal jabs at someone because of how you feel that has nothing to do with the list, and you feeling as though the person was being rewarded for being put on the list, means that you really weren't at the table. And sometimes when people aren't at the table regarding certain things, they're going to express how they feel, which they have their right to do. But you don't have to personally attack someone to think you're making a point when you really aren't making a point. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Just want to get that out there because I'm one of those people who I've learned sometimes we talk about things and things can seem like they're okay, but if it's not brought to attention, you're sitting there festering and holding on to it. And I'm not doing that anymore. 2019 has forced me and taught me to be transparent. And I know this is an odd point to put this into the podcast, but I wanted to get this out there before I forget or before it just lingers on my mind and on my thoughts. So that's all I have for that. And we're going to go ahead and continue with the rest of our topics. Continuing with stuff. This was a big story, no pun intended, because there's a wall display by Samsung, who I personally am a big fan of. My TV, I'm not gonna say what size because y'all ain't coming for me, but I have a pretty substantially large TV, and the TV that they're promoting now is known as the Wall, which is a 219-inch display. Last year, Samsung unveiled the Wall, which was a 146-inch display that could be adapted or adjusted to suit just about any taste. Not to be outdone even by themselves, the company took to CES 2019 to show off a newer, bigger model of the Wall. Clocking in at a staggering 219 inches, Samsung's latest modular display promises customization that is years beyond the most common television and display technology on the market today. Based on what Samsung calls micro LED technology, the Wall is quite literally a display unlike most others. In fact, it's hard to see the actual form of the device itself. It appears to be on an actual wall, and that approach means it's capable of a lot of neat tricks. In addition to simply blending into the environment, the Wall can actually simulate an environment. The video above shows the simulated furniture, including tables and shelves, as well as various bits of home decor. Of course, the Wall does actually function like a television set or monitor. The screen can be simulated to just about any size, shape, or resolution. Even the aspect ratio itself is flexible, since the dimension of the content or the display can be manipulated by the user. This could technically allow viewers to increase their display size as simply as they might adjust the volume using a TV remote. Big deal only because a lot of people, when they watch certain things, they would prefer it in its native view. Native view, for any of you who are tech guys or girls who don't know this, is if you're playing a game on, if you're watching a movie, a YouTube video on a device, and its natural size is blocked where you have that block on both sides, that's native view. If it's being pushed or expanded, then they end up making it full screen as possible, which sometimes takes out some of the viewing or the imagery of the actual video that you're watching. I hope I explained that as clear as I could. If not, talk to, like, gamers can explain it very simple if you are dealing with the right people in gaming. More information about the Wall, including details from last year's 146-inch model, can be found at the Samsung website. They kind of just go over, say that it's on Shack News and Gamer Hub TV, if you want to kind of get the full deep dive of this TV. The only thing that I think of with this 219-inch model is you got to have a lot of wall to place this. Like, this isn't a TV that you're in an average everyday home and buying. Like, even with a 46-inch wall, that's a lot of space and a lot of land to survey when factoring that in. So I just wanted to, that was a story that I ran across that may be big to some people. I'm going to shock people because normally I'm always on the Spotify train, but I'm actually going to talk about Apple Music. Anyone who is with Verizon, they were initially offered a 6-month subscription of free access to Apple Music. Now, starting on January the 17th, all new and existing customers will be able to enjoy Apple Music at no additional cost. So you'll basically be saving $10 a month on Apple Music through Verizon. which I think is great. I, you know, let me read this article and then I'm going to go to the rest of this article and then go into it. According to Verizon VP of Marketing Angie Klein, the company is expanding its partnership with Apple Music because the original 6-month offer was a hit with customers. Unfortunately, only 2 out of the 3 plans are getting Apple Music as a permanent perk. Its cheapest option, Go Unlimited, will still come bundled with free access to the service, but only for 6 months. Apple Music is a platform that is growing into its own monster. I've heard this said on Joe's podcast, and I can be a witness to it. I don't feel as though Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all of those streaming platforms are really being seen for what they're worth. Only because there's a lot of surface to scratch as to what can be found with said app. And a lot of times we're not going to really think about those things until it comes to light. Because for the end user, all the end user is concerned about is, if I open this app, am I going to be able to listen to whatever songs that I'm trying to find? Or am I going to be able to stream whatever songs I'm trying to stream? I talked about this, and a friend of mine, she got me on the Apple Music wave, and I've shared this before. Apple Music is a great service. At some point, Apple is going to learn, if they have not learned, to package Apple Music with Apple Podcasts and not have them be separate. That's me just kind of thinking from the overall standpoint, because it will make it a little more organized. Even as a Spotify user, that's something I still want Spotify to work on, is making the interface easier, consistent, fluid, stress-free, like all of those tangibles that you need to really make what this platform has accessible. But I do like this. I like this option. I mean, you're getting Apple Music for free. And that, getting Apple Music and all of the features, that's including the radio stations. That's including the special shows of Beats One, Drake, when she was on that, Nicki Minaj. You'll get Ebro. You get that whole package. I think that's good. So that's that feeling towards the the Apple Music Verizon partnership, which is obviously going well. But you just want to make sure you have the right plan to fulfill or get that feature. Mortal Kombat is very, 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 very close. And when I say very close, right now, yes, it's the end of January and the game doesn't come out until April. But literally in a couple of weeks, you'll see March, and it's going to be right in our back pocket. One of the links shows the initial trailer. Another link they have, the other link that I provide you actually shows the full 3-hour and 46-minute stream, which I think is great. This was announced by NetherRealm. The game itself, its release date will be April the 23rd. It's going to be launched on all 4 consoles, or on all 4 platforms, PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. There was a community reveal on January the 17th that was very, very detailed and gave a lot of information regarding the game. I watched a good amount of it. You really got to see the combos. You got to see the moves. The meters have changed for good. if you're just keeping up with it, just keep an eye out for Mortal Kombat. I'm giving it small attention because they gave you some information, but they really didn't show you a lot as of yet. They did mention that if you do pre-order, you get access to Shao Kahn. There was also talk that Ronda Rousey will be doing the voice for and I forgot her name that fast. Well, I gotta get my life together because most of this I'm usually prepared. Hold on, y'all. I'm usually on top of this because she will be Sonya Blade. Because I remember, like they had her come out and everything. You actually got, like I said, you got to see actual matches played for body count fighting, which was great. It was a full process in place for this, so I was definitely enjoying what they're bringing to the table for Mortal Kombat. All I ask is that Mortal Kombat 11 has a stronger shelf life than Mortal Kombat 10. I still like 10 personally, but I also know when it comes to gaming, you gotta move with what's coming or what's big, and that's basically what happened with Mortal Kombat. This is a unique form of stuff that I'm going to talk about that I have next, because I feel as though it's something that people don't think about, but I have found myself thinking about it more. And I probably have talked about it on the show. I believe I have the link in the show notes as one of my promo sponsors. If I don't, we're going to change that because it should be a readily available link that people will want to get used to using. Because I know in 228 it was shared. And I just want people to... I do have it. Okay. The Bagby company has been a godsend for me in what I've been able to find and what I'm planning to use since getting that business process in place. They introduced this term to me called FUMMY, and I've talked about it on here a little bit before, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more now because it's not something that we acknowledge enough, but it's something that people need to be better with doing. Because I've always wondered for the longest time why people aren't very good with communication. And part of why we're not good with communication is because most people from my generation, and when I say my generation, I refer to early 30s, mid to late 30s, and I'll even go early 40s. I'm giving like that big of a scope because I'm 36. And the amount of the lack of communication I see on a daily basis personally saddens me because we're so tied to and glued into our phones that we don't actually know how to interact with human beings. I have done small things. This article that I'm going to share shows you some small things to do in learning how to break that pattern or that trend of having to constantly use cell phones. Because cell phones do consume us. Like, don't get me wrong. And even me as a tech person, like, I use my laptop, I use my tablet, I use those things, but I use it and I'm done with it. But now I see myself more not using my phone as often. And a lot of people are always like, you're not on the phone a whole lot. And I'm like, part of it is because, and I even had somebody who they were having this conversation of they're trying to find ways to not be on the phone as often. And if you really are willing to not do so, you can do it, but you just have to know that it's gonna come with making a sacrifice. I'm hoping it's gonna show my times, because my times lately have like dropped. I know Friday was not my best, and I'm waiting for it to update, but it may not. So I'm gonna see, because I'm gonna share this, and then I'm gonna talk about like just where this goes. Yeah, I figured Friday would be horrible. Friday, I was on my phone for 5 hours and 15 minutes. I'm sorry, 5 hours and 18 minutes. Thursday, 2 hours and 33 minutes. Wednesday was where I was learning this process. An hour and 54 minutes. Today, so far, it's been an hour and 37 minutes, with the remainder of the day still available. My average time on being on my phone is 3 hours and 8 minutes a day. It has decreased from last week, which I'm accepting of that. All I know is I just don't want to be as tied to my phone. And I've worked harder and harder on achieving that. As the term, and I've referenced the term in this show, and I'm going to go ahead and explain it to you, is phubbing is when you snub someone in favor of your mobile phone. So it's phone snubbing. Another way to define phubbing is to ignore a person or one's surroundings when in a social situation by busying oneself with a phone or other mobile device. And I guess it's okay. That was because I'm looking at this word and confused. But anyway, what causes phubbing is that it's factors associated with phubbing behavior, which includes addictions to mobile phone, texting, social media, and internet addictions. Another study published in 2018 looked at phubbing behavior amongst 400 young adults selected randomly for 5 colleges in India and produced similar results. Researchers found that the most important predictors linked with phubbers are internet addiction, smartphone addiction, FOMO, as I've talked about in one of my blogs, or fear of missing out, and lack of self-control. The article is very in-depth. I'm going to go to some key points that I want to bring to people's attention, because I don't want to spend too much time on this. There are major dangers of phubbing. One is that it's a general relationship killer. 2 is that it harms romantic partnerships. 3, it damages mental health. 4, it negative impacts on physical, mental, and social health in youth. Because sometimes we can find something and we're quick to share everything with others, but not actually talk about things. Like when people looked up stuff before, you kind of researched it and you talked about it a little bit. But now, the minute something happens, we're running to Google, expecting Google to tell us everything. Google, Siri, the speaker, I'm not going to say the name because I already know it's going to hear me and I forgot to mute it. But all those factors come into play. I'm going to kind of cut, because this article that I have, I want people to read it because it's a lot of good information. Like, let me go into that part first, but I want to get to how to overcome this phubbing and smartphone addiction. If you're trying to stop phubbing, then it's important to learn how to spend time without your phone. If you're speaking with a loved one, friend, or colleague, make it a personal rule to not look at your phone unless it's an emergency of some kind. When it comes to social media, try to refrain from mindlessly scrolling. Did you know scientists are identifying links between social media and mental illness? And what's tough, before I read these, is that a lot of people place this expectation of what they see on social media to be who they are. And they're trying to be these people when it's in reality, they are their own people. You have to be your own person. And sometimes it's tough to be your own person when, whether it's safe to acknowledge or not, you don't know who you are. One option they give is to schedule a phone-free hour. You put your phone away somewhere where you can't hear it for a full hour while you have quality time. And this is their basis on a relationship, because a lot of relationships, whether it's said or not, some people will spend the night just on their phone when you should be actually trying to talk with someone. Set up phone-free zones. Make certain rooms in your house technology-free or at least phone-free zones. For me, this is one that I've started, and it's a great thing to do. The bedroom is a great place to start. Not using technology while eating meals together is another common recommendation to stop addictive behavior related to cell phone use. Setting boundaries like this for yourself and your family can go a long way to improve connection and relationship satisfaction. Don't fub others for work. For many of us, at the end of the day, and when we look back on our lives, we don't want to think we traded in our most precious relationships to be tied to our work 24/7. I know many Americans feel overworked and overstressed, but know that you are in control when it comes to setting people's expectations. You may not want to drop everything during off-work hours to answer a work request in seconds. Just because this behavior is common today doesn't mean that it's normal or healthy. And finally, and this is one that I have still been working on because I'm going to have a very interesting blog about that tomorrow, is to center your mind. Stress-reducing activities like exercise, prayer, and meditation can also really help to break addictions to technology, which can make you less likely to be a fubber. There is a website called stopfubbing.com, which is devoted to ending fubbing. The site offers posters for business to hang up to discourage fubbing. He also has another article called nomophobia that he talks about. This is gonna really, and I'm gonna talk about this, and then we'll go into my favorite part. These are some statistics. On average, we check our phones 150 times a day, which is roughly every 4 to 6 minutes. 46% of people in relationships have been fubbed, and they probably don't even know it. 22.6% say fubbing caused relationship conflicts because you're missing the conversation someone's having with you because you're looking at a post on social media that can wait. 87% of teens would rather communicate using text messaging rather than face-to-face interaction. The United States, and particularly New York City, may have the most fubbers, followed by Los Angeles and London. An average restaurant will see 36 cases of fubbing during an average dinner session. Going back to the teen part, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to go to the next bit. Anytime we've hit a point where kids are at outings or birthday parties or get-togethers, and the entire time that you're all with each other, you're on your phone, that tells a lot about where we are as a society. Because that means that we can't take time to just disconnect and actually talk to people and communicate. This is something that as people, not even just Americans, as people, we need to work on. Because if kids can only talk through text, that's a sad statement. Because if you take phones away from them and actually force them to talk about things, they don't want to do that. So I'm just giving that conversation some attention because I feel like fubbing is very off the radar, but it needs to be seen and noticed more consistently. I'm upset because this article is not going to show it. Before I go into Ads of the Week, I know I did say that I would be doing more musical sesh info, giving some more listens. I know I talked about the Future's album last week, and it was pretty good. Um, how can I put this? I've listened to a couple of new music, a couple of new songs. I did listen to "Girls Have Fun" by Tyga. That's pretty cool. Everyone's on the Middle Child song by J. Cole. I personally, I mean, I'm a J. Cole fan anyway. So J. Cole's album, or his single, I've been listening to. Dua Lipa, she has a new song called Swan Song, which is pretty good. Everything else, I've just kind of been skipping through, catching what I can. I haven't listened to Tentacion's new single. There's a lot. Backstreet Boys has a new album out. Need to listen to that. And it looks like Summer Walker has a new single, so I need to check that out. So music for me has not been the best. I haven't had the best listening sessions. And I'm going to talk about this before we go to Acid Week because it's important to bring up, because I'm one of those people that y'all know I like to keep it as bright as I can. Listening to as much music as is available, as well as listening to podcasts as much as is available, is not as easy as it sounds. And I probably have said this before, but I'm saying it because it's something to kind of note as to why it doesn't come up. It doesn't come to surface all the time. And it happens, but I'm accountable for realizing that. So if I get what I can and I listen to what I can, I value it. But it's just been a tough stage of like listening to music. Because a lot of times, even when we get in the car and I'm going somewhere, I don't listen to as much music as I used to. And I dislike that. But I wanted to go ahead and bring attention to our state of the music and all. Now for what I like to call the stupid stuff. First things first. Florida State, you're getting ass of the week. I'm not going to read the article because the article kind of self-explanatory. Back on Monday, of course, as many of you may or may not know, it was Martin Luther King Day. And Florida State decided it was in their best interest to kind of do a promo or a push in saying the, happy MLK, go Noles, hashtag do something. And they basically took the message do something and showed Martin Luther King giving the chop. And under it, the message says, if I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way, which is one of Martin Luther King's famous quotes. Whoever the graphic person was that did this should have known this was not going to be a good idea before they published it. But to go along with it just is shocking to me. Florida State then turned around and gave a response to apologize in a well-intentioned effort to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. on the special day. A member of our recruiting staff created a graphic using one of Dr. King's quotes. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. The quote resonated with our program's do something mantra. However, in our attempt to more closely connect the message to FSU, we foolishly posted a graphic that was not in line with our intent. We are sorry for missing the mark in our attempt to celebrate Dr. King's legacy. Y'all missed the mark on this one. It just was horrible because he had them doing, of all things, to show him doing a tomahawk chop was just it wasn't thought out properly. So that's one of our asses of the week. Our second ass of the week literally deserved ass of the week for this topic. There is a game about slapping an ass. And I need to remember because they showed, the name of the game is called Slappy Ass. You pay $3.50 to get this app. It does basically what you expect. It's a screen full of one giant ass, which you can spank. It fills up a heart meter, which pulls double duty as a butt icon. When the meter goes full, It gives you a gift, which can range anywhere from new skins and underwear to new toys that you can use on the ass. And I'm being fair because Kotaku's intros, they're always going to be some shade and some weirdness, but the player starts off with the most basic of slappy tools they're on hand. You can expand your box of toys by filling the spank meter, which will get you items like the riding crop, a pair of lips to kiss the bum, and some rather medieval torture-like instruments which can zap the butt while making a guitar noise of some kind of pink portal thing. I'm not sure if I'm just not au fait with butt spanking implements, or if that's just a fantasy toy. I can't even tell if it feels nice. It looks a bit like what I imagine breast pumps feel like. At least it keeps the spank meter going. And then they just kind of break down a little bit more information for this. They initially and they close out removing the person's name that they had talked about in the initial part of the article. So if you're looking to get your ass slapping kicks off, you're welcome to buy this app from itch.io. Let me make sure that's the correct link that I need to promote it. Yeah, itch.io. Our final ass of the week, and I feel like every month a Florida ass of the week comes up, and this month's Florida ass of the week is no exception. There was a woman who was shot after she performed a sex act for $5 in Pringles. A woman was shot Monday night outside a gas station after she performed a sex act in exchange for $5 and some potato chips. Police said they were called to a Shell station on Lynn Turner Road around 10:30 p.m. on Monday because the person had been shot. They found a woman whose name was not released with a gunshot wound to her shoulder. She was taken to the hospital and her injuries were not considered life-threatening. The woman told investigators that she agreed to perform a sex act with a man in exchange for $5 and some Pringles potato chips. After the act, she said the man demanded the $5 back and shot her when she refused. He ran off and police did not have a suspect description. Anyone you know with information is asked to call JSO at 904-630-0500 or Crime Stoppers. Not the way I expected to end my podcast, but I'm going to end it on that one. My only question that I always ask internally about this, because I know it's a real story, but it's still a shocking real story, is what kind of Pringles were they? It could not have been plain. If it was plain, then we need to reevaluate our lives big time. And the mere fact that he wanted the money back after giving the money for said performance, you was that bad off? Like, that was a rough situation, man. But anywho, that is all I have for this week's show. Thank y'all for tuning in. I appreciate all the support. Keep checking out the shows. Next week, we will be getting a little bit into, I think they won't have the list unveiled by then. Because we'll probably get some Pro Bowl update. I believe the show will be finished, so I'll be able to talk about Valley of the Boom a little bit. And we'll see what else crazy happens in the news. But until next time, this is The Pat signing out. And I am your host, BT. And y'all have a good one. Another episode is in the books. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. As I always share, if you'd like to get into podcasting, you can check out Spreaker.com. And if you're looking to invest in a microphone, or if you're looking to genuinely start with recording, I use the Blue Yeti microphone, but you may prefer to do the Samson Meteor. Just know that if it's your craft and it's something that you're meant to do it and do it well. That's my main thing to tell people about 2019. Do it and be reliable. Y'all take it easy.